A storm cell sits over the eastern seaboard at 35,000 feet. Lightning strobes every few seconds, vertical bolts, horizontal crawlers, energy discharging across miles of charged air. Through the middle of it, a commercial aircraft is flying. Aluminum fuselage, full fuel tanks in the wings, the tallest object for miles. The physics seem obvious. Metal conducts electricity, lightning finds the path of least resistance, and that aircraft is loaded with jet fuel. It should not survive this. Except it will. That plane will almost certainly get struck, and nothing will happen. The pilot will file a short maintenance note. Every commercial aircraft gets hit roughly once a year. The US fleet absorbs 3,000 strikes annually. That needs explaining. The instinct makes complete sense. Metal conducts electricity. Lightning seeks the tallest available conductor. A commercial aircraft at 35,000 feet is the tallest thing for miles in every direction, and it's loaded with anywhere from 10,000 to 100,000 pounds of jet fuel depending on the route. Using that logic, the conclusion is catastrophe every time. Every step in that chain is physically accurate, yet the conclusion is completely wrong. Here's what most people miss. The aircraft isn't trying to avoid conducting lightning. It's designed to conduct it deliberately along a controlled path and out the other side before anything critical gets touched. That distinction is everything. In 1836, Michael Faraday lined a room with metal mesh, sat inside it, and watched electrical sparks discharge harmlessly against the outer surface while the interior stayed completely calm. A sealed conductive shell routes charge around its exterior. Nothing penetrates the inside. The phenomenon carries his name, the Faraday cage. A commercial aircraft fuselage is one. When lightning strikes the nose or a leading edge, which is where it almost always makes first contact, the current does not enter the cabin. It travels along the outer aluminum skin, across the fuselage, along the wings, down through the tail structure. It moves the way water moves through a channel, following the path of least resistance across the conductive surface. The passengers, the avionics, the fuel, all of it sitting inside a shell the current never actually reaches. This is not accidental engineering. Every structural joint between fuselage panels is electrically bonded. Every rivet and bracket is designed to maintain a continuous conductive path across the entire structure. The cage is not a single piece of metal. It is hundreds of separate pieces connected mechanically and electrically to behave as one continuous surface. The lightning enters, it travels, it exits. The aircraft keeps flying. Here is where the engineering gets uncomfortable. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner is approximately 50% carbon fiber composite by weight. That was a landmark decision. Carbon fiber is lighter than aluminum and significantly stronger. Over a typical service lifetime, that weight reduction saves enormous quantities of fuel. The 787 burns roughly 20% less than comparable earlier wide-body jets. The commercial case is overwhelming, but carbon fiber doesn't conduct electricity the way aluminum does. Not even close. A 787 fuselage without modification would be a partially broken Faraday cage. Current striking the exterior could punch through weak points in the composite, find unpredictable internal paths, and potentially reach critical electronics or fuel system components. Boeing's solution was to weave a layer of copper mesh directly into the composite panels during manufacturing. Invisible from the outside. From the window seat, the aircraft looks carbon fiber. Electrically, it still behaves like metal. The engineers wanted the weight savings badly enough that they rebuilt the electrical behavior of aluminum into a material that doesn't naturally have it. The Faraday cage was too important to leave behind. Now look at the trailing edges of any commercial aircraft wing, the wingtips, the tail surfaces, the narrow edges of the control surfaces. Small, pointed black rods attached at intervals. Every passenger who has ever sat by the window has seen them. Almost none of them know what those rods actually do. They're called static discharge wicks, and they're performing a critical function on every single flight. An aircraft moving through air, particularly through cloud, which is dense with ice crystals and charged particles, builds up static charge continuously from friction alone. That charge accumulates on the fuselage and wings. Without a controlled bleed path, it builds until it discharges in a single sudden event, possibly near a fuel vent or vapor source. The wicks prevent that. They're shaped to a sharp point deliberately, sharp geometry maximizes charge dissipation, and they bleed the accumulated charge away in a continuous stream of small, controlled releases. The aircraft is always quietly exhaling electricity. The fuel tanks have their own layer entirely. Modern commercial aircraft blanket the tank interiors with nitrogen, an inert gas that displaces oxygen from the vapor space above the fuel. Without oxygen present, even a direct spark inside the tank cannot ignite anything. The tank doesn't just hold fuel, it's engineered so that fuel can never burn inside it. Here is what the pilot actually does when lightning strikes the aircraft in flight. Nothing. No emergency call, no diversion, no priority landing request. Standard procedure is to note the event, complete the flight, and log the strike in the post-flight maintenance report so technicians can inspect the entry and exit points. That's the entire response. To anyone watching, this seems almost reckless. The aircraft was just hit by one of the most powerful electrical events in nature, but the pilot's non-response is exactly the correct response. The strike was anticipated. The aircraft was certified for it. The systems were built assuming it would happen multiple times in any given year. What actually concerns a pilot in a thunderstorm isn't the lightning. It's the turbulence, the hail, and especially the wind shear inside the convective cell. Those are the real threats. The lightning is, counterintuitively, the least dangerous part of the storm. String. FAA and aircraft manufacturers could no longer treat fuel vapor ignition as a theoretical edge case. It had happened. The response was systematic. Nitrogen inerting standards were developed, tank sealing requirements were overhauled, and electrical bonding specifications across the entire airframe were significantly tightened. Every standard the modern commercial aircraft meets regarding lightning protection exists in some form because of what happened over Maryland in 1963. No confirmed lightning-caused fatality on a certified modern commercial aircraft since. Not because lightning stopped striking planes, because the planes changed. Those black rods at the wingtips, now the meaning is clear. The perfectly flush exterior panels with no visible gaps or lifted edges, that's not just aerodynamics or aesthetics, that's electrical bonding. Every junction maintained to keep the cage intact and continuous. When technicians inspect an aircraft after a confirmed lightning strike, they look for burn marks at the entry and exit points. The current moved through the structure so cleanly, along such a precisely managed path, that the physical damage is typically measured in millimeters. A small scorch on the nose radome, a small burn at a wingtip or trailing edge. The rest of the aircraft, untouched. The system is robust. It is not infallible. The real concern for modern avionics engineers isn't direct current penetration. The Faraday cage handles that reliably. It's indirect effects. When a massive current discharge travels along the exterior of the fuselage, it generates a rapidly changing electromagnetic field around the structure. That field can induce voltage spikes in internal wiring without the current itself ever physically reaching the wires. Modern aircraft use shielded cables and surge protection throughout the avionics specifically to handle those transient spikes. As fly-by-wire systems have replaced mechanical cable linkages, meaning electronic signals now command the flight surfaces directly, the tolerance for unexpected electrical disturbance has narrowed considerably. Composite aircraft also require ongoing inspection of the copper mesh layer for delamination, where the material separates internally and creates gaps in the conductive path. The damage is invisible from outside. It takes specialized equipment to find it all. That aircraft flying through the storm at the start of this, it's not lucky. It's not hoping to thread the gap between strikes. It was designed to absorb every strike it takes. Every static wick bleeding charge from the trailing edges. Every panel joint bonded across the fuselage. Every fuel tank sealed and nitrogen blanketed. Every shielded cable ready for the electromagnetic spike. The entire aircraft is the answer to a single engineering question asked decades ago. Not whether lightning will hit, but what happens when it does. The answer built into every certified commercial aircraft is the same: nothing, by design. But here's what that cage cannot stop. A powerful solar storm, the kind that drove auroras as far south as the Caribbean in 1859, and which scientists confirm is entirely possible again, would not punch through the fuselage. It would quietly saturate the GPS receivers, overwhelm the communications arrays, and destabilize the fly-by-wire electronics from the inside. The Faraday cage handles what comes from outside. It has almost no answer for what's already filling the air surrounding the aircraft. And for a global aviation system, now entirely dependent on continuous GPS and satellite communication to function, that is a very different kind of vulnerability and a much harder engineering problem to solve.